HaYehudim, the Jews accepted upon themselves what they had begun to do. What had they started to do? They had started with accepting the giving of the Torah, and it's finished at the time of Purim. Why at the time of Purim of all time? It seems like the giving of the Torah is the time to properly accept the giving of the Torah. Purim, they had actual Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. Mordechai, the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, helped bring that out within the people. Specifically in the school children, he gathered 22,000 school children to teach them Torah, raise them up to this level. That overall is a recap of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar. Remember, said in 1927 in Moscow that the Rebbe gives us, and then the Rebbe asks questions on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar. Number one, why are we talking about Mordechai and the school children? This doesn't seem to be part of the main topic of what is it about Purim that's so special. What is it about the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim, the self-sacrifice of Purim that's so special that now we complete the giving of the Torah? Not just that, why are we comparing the Jews' physical state? It should just be comparing their spiritual state. Why are we bringing that in? Why do we have such a big emphasis on sacrificing life for Torah? The mitzvahs are about v'chai behem, to live by them. Not only that, but in the generation of the giving of the Torah, they were willing to have Mesiras Nefesh. So what's the difference between the willingness and the act of it? And then also, Purim and Hanukkah we're looking at. Both times when the Jewish people were persecuted. What is it specifically about Purim? There's something about the Mesiras Nefesh of Purim completes the giving of the Torah. And then we saw a whole bunch of texts about Mesiras Nefesh. When should a person sacrifice themselves or not? The emphasis really is v'chai behem, that you're supposed to be living for the mitzvahs. All of it just brings us back to the same idea of why is it the Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice of Purim, that the Jewish people openly studied Torah and said, yes, this is who we are, we're not turning away from this or anything. Why is that so critical for accepting the Torah? We also have to look now what the purpose of the giving of the Torah is. It's not just about telling the laws, they knew the laws. The forefathers kept the mitzvahs, whatever level, material, spiritual level they could. What was distinct about the giving of the Torah is the fusion. Material and spiritual come together so that the spiritual can affect the material world, and the material world cannot be elevated to a spiritual kind of level. How can two opposites unite when something greater than both brings them together? How do you get a physical world and the spiritual realms? How do you get them to unite? When God reveals or in revelation of that, that's how you bring them together. And that also, we saw the whole example of the angels, Michael and Gabriel, Michael and Gabriel, Prince of Water and Prince of Fire, but there's peace on high between them. Because of God, they make peace between themselves for him. Then we got into what the main bulk of the Maamar is about, these three sort of aspects of Torah mitzvahs after the giving of the Torah. Tachton, the lower level, the physical aspect of things that stays physical, the more physically driven aspect of things. Elyon, the higher aspect, that's the spiritual, remains spiritual, the more spiritually driven aspect of things. So now we have two totally opposite things, the physical and we got the spiritual. So how do we bring them together? We have this level of batul, that revelation of God's essence brings them together, which is what happened at the beginning of the Torah. The physical and the spiritual can merge now. We have a fusion now. So even here, we still have the physically driven aspect of things, the spiritually driven aspect of things, which seem to be two totally different things, but now we can achieve the third level that brings them together. So we looked at it, not just the aspects of the mitzvah after Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, but also the fulfillment of a mitzvah, this whole attitude, approach we have toward fulfilling mitzvah. You can habituate your body to it, it's all habit. Body is just doing things by rote. That would be the lower aspect of things. The higher level, the spiritually driven aspect of things, I love God so much, I want to connect with him. The soul loves God, must connect him, that's why I do a mitzvah. And the subjugate, how do you get one to impact the other? How do you get the merger between the two of what is rote and what is love? The physical aspect of things, the spiritual aspect of things, how do you override the identity of both to make peace between them? It's when we do the mitzvah simply because God said so. I'm not doing the mitzvahs because I've trained myself to it. I'm not doing mitzvahs because I have overwhelming love of God. I put both of those aside, I do the mitzvahs because God said so. That is the fusion level, that's the higher level I can reach when I put both of those aspects to the side. Then we had a lot of text about that. Then we got to three general approaches to doing mitzvahs. Mitzvahs were given to refine man in creation. The more physically driven aspect of things. We saw a lot of text about that. Why does God care how you shecht an animal like this or like this? Why did God give us the mitzvahs? Is there a reason for all of them? A lot about that from Moreh Nevuchim. Ultimately, there is a reason, even if we don't fully understand it. The higher aspect of things is not just that we physically need refinement. It's that the mitzvahs were given to walk in Hashem's ways and to connect with him above the levels of creation. Being God-like is to do as God does. That's why we do the mitzvahs. That's the level that we're middle of. Then the third level is that mitzvahs make man significant and connecting to the essence of the commander. So finishing off the aspect of the fact that the mitzvahs were given to refine man, to refine us. This is from Tanya. This is where it talks about okay. It follows, therefore, that the purpose of the Messianic era and the resurrection, namely the revelation of his glory and divinity and the banishment of the spirit of impurity from the earth, is entirely dependent on our drawing down his godliness and the blessed and soft light upon all the 248 limbs of the vital soul of all Israel. For by way of the vital soul, all the world will be suffused with godliness, and this is achieved by the vital soul's performance of all the 248 positive mitzvah. Vital soul, that's another way of saying the enlivening soul, the animal soul, the natural soul. This is the soul that gives us life. All of this is about that soul doing Torah mitzvahs. and also dependent on our banishing the spirit of impurity, i.e. the 3 impure klipot, from the vital soul of all Israel, thus banishing it from the entire world, as in refining ourselves so we could say no to that other side and only be totally committed to godliness. And this is accomplished by the vital soul's observance of all the 365 prohibitive mitzvahs, thus preventing its 365 blood vessels from drawing nurture from the spirit of impurity. The 248 limbs, and each mitzvah is connected to limb of the body. So doing that mitzvah is how we refine it. That's part of why it's bringing in the 248 and 365 blood vessels, the way that it's connected to all these things, is that's how we refine the physical body, physical aspects of ourselves, is through the Torah mitzvahs. The prohibitive commandments, the thou shalt nots, interestingly, they come from a higher level than the thou shalts. Because the whole idea that you could do a mitzvah means that God was able to take his infinite will and channel it into an action that we can do. The whole idea of me doing a mitzvah means that God says this is something that can be purified in the physical world through your physical action. That's what a mitzvah, right? We know mitzvahs are action-oriented. The prohibitive commandments, they're coming from a higher level. We can't do them because we cannot purify them. They're forbidden to us because remember the whole thing about tied down versus untied. So things that are unbound, untied, mutar. These are things that can be elevated versus things that are asur, means that it's tied down. It's not forbidden and thereby it's tied down. Because it's tied down and we cannot elevate it, therefore it's forbidden to us. So the fact that you can't eat this and you can't do that, the reason for it is because we don't have the capacity to elevate it. So that is not something that was able to be drawn down enough to be able to be channeled into physical action for elevation purposes. Thereby it is forbidden to us. For example, like we've said before, how a pig, chazir, lachzor, to return. So in Messianic times, it's going to be kosher pig. It says it specifically about a pig. So why is it not kosher now? Because where we're at now, we can't elevate it. Thereby, it is forbidden to us. So that is why the prohibitive commandments, there's such a negative, you don't let us do this, you don't let this. Because God says the fun. That's not why. It's because it's too high. We can't reach it. Our physical action can't impact it. So therefore, God's like, don't even go there. Anyways, why does infusing the vital soul with Ein Sof light and banishing the impure klipa produce a parallel effect on the entire world? So now we have the question that it's all about me and refining myself. What does that have to do with the world at large? Remember, we saw this also in the Pesach Maamars, that God put the world into their hearts. So the spiritual state of the Jewish people affects the world. That's the whole thing with the splitting of the sea, and then we have to go through that in Crucible to get the world ready for the giving of the Torah. Question is, why is it my self-refinement actions that are impacting the world? For the community of Israel, comprising 600,000 particular souls, there's 600,000 root souls. Then everybody's a bunch of branches. We're all reincarnations of those souls. Is the general source of vitality for the world as a whole, since the world was created for the sake of these souls. The Rebbe is saying in general, we provide life to the world because the world was created for us. To do Torah mitzvahs, that's the whole purpose of the world. Each specific one of them contains and teaches related the vitality of 1/600,000th part of the entire world. Everybody has their slice of world to elevate. This part depends on his vital soul for its elevation to God through the soul's own elevation. This means that one elevates his portion of the world by partaking of the world for the requirements of his body and vital soul in the service of God. By using the object of this world that one's body and vital soul need for the sake of serving God, one elevates his portion of the world, for example, eating, drinking, and the like, one's dwelling on all of his utensils. Our actions, using the world around us and elevating the world around us, is what elevates the world. Because even if walking a shul on Shabbos, it's not just, the fact that I went to shul, that's what's elevated. It's the shoes I walked in, it's the whole thing I took to drive to get those shoes, it's the pavements I'm walking upon, and everything it took to make that pavement. It's everything together. All of it gets elevated through this one action. There's a whole chain link elevation. So every person has their slice of world that has to be elevated. Well, how do I know what my slice of world is? Well, wherever you end up, that's where your slice of world is. That's the whole idea of God putting us where we need to be. So wherever you end up in your life, it's not because, there were cheap tickets, so I got there on vacation. That's not what it is. If you are there, there's something for you to elevate here. So make sure to do Jewish wherever you go. And then they have to elevate it through when they repent. This is stuff, if you remember, chapters 6, 7, and 8 of Tanya deal with this. Things that are forbidden, thou shalt nots, these are things that we can't necessarily elevate. You have to have a very high level of teshuvah to be able to elevate it. Or once that action's been done, it's caught down there, and not until Mashiach comes are things freed. However, everything else, things that are permitted that were used wrong, there shouldn't have done that's not necessarily forbidden, but like that was a bad move kind of thing. Those things could be elevated. Because the gray zone means that there's darkness and light in it, so you chose the dark side, but you could bring it back into the light. It's only temporarily bound. Again, through teshuvah, through coming back. Like if you were put in the same situation and you do the better job, that elevates it again. So all these kinds of things, even things that are done neutrally, like without any fervor to them, can still be raised up when you do things with more fervor. So, the descent of the soul is not for its own sake. Now here's talking about the godly soul. So first we went through the whole thing about how the natural animal vital soul engaged in the world, and through that it elevates the world. And now we're talking about the descent of the soul. This is same chapter, but it's a little bit later in the chapter. The godly soul does not come down to the world for its own sake. The godly soul does not need to be refined. The godly soul is a piece of God. What needs refinement? So this goes to the whole idea. Why do we do mitzvahs? To refine man, to refine ourselves physically Physical refinement is why we do mitzvot. But it's descent into this world to be clothed in a body and vital soul is for the sole purpose of perfecting them, to separate them from the evil of the 3 impure klipot by observing the 365 prohibitions and their offshoots. Restraint from doing something is almost a greater level than proactively doing something. Holding yourself back from something is a different level than, okay, we're going along to get it done. I.e. by observing the biblical and rabbinic prohibitions, and to elevate his vital soul together with the portion of the world at large that relates to it, binding and uniting them with Ein Sof light, Ein Sof without end, God's essence, which he draws into them by performing all the 248 positive mitzvot through the agency of the vital soul, since the vital soul is the one that performs all mitzvot involving action. As explained above, that the divine soul can activate the body and performance of the mitzvot only by way of the vital soul. The godly soul cannot do a mitzvah by itself. It needs a body to do a mitzvah. What gives life to the body is the animal soul that's pumping the blood through the body. So the godly soul doesn't come down to the world for itself. It doesn't necessarily need the refinement. What needs the refinement is the body and the animal soul. The godly soul is trying to effectuate, trying to make things happen in the world through these mediums. However, God didn't just make us robots. So he gave us a body and a soul, these activating aspects of ourselves that also have their own things that they want to do. So the whole point of his descent is to refine them. It is likewise written that the divine soul itself does not need perfecting at all, and there is no need for it to be embodied in this world in a body and vital soul, except to draw down light to perfect them. And this parallels exactly the mystery of the exile of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is in God's dwelling presence, the feminine aspect, whose purpose is to refine the sparks of holiness which fell into the klipot, so that the divine soul enter into exile within the body and vital soul to perform them and to extract the sparks of holiness they contain. It's considered exile for the godly soul because it doesn't have full control. And when you can't be your own self, it's like being a captive. It's like being in exile. Creation and the soul's descent into the body were intended for the purpose of elevating the body and vital soul and thereby the entire world. All of our actions affect the world around us. Moreover, this objective is reached primarily through mitzvahs involving action. As these mitzvahs are performed by the body and vital soul, these mitzvahs are therefore of primary importance. This whole Maamar is about Torah study in general, but remember in time we used to go back and forth. Mitzvahs are the most important, Torah is the most important, mitzvahs are more important. And it all depends on what their focus is. Ultimately, we came to the thing, wherever you are in your refinement journey, you got to get mitzvahs done. Because mitzvahs are what elevate the world. Physical action-oriented mitzvahs is what everything's all about. We got to get this stuff done. Again, that is how we refine ourselves in the world, through action-oriented mitzvahs. Because physical action, we get the physical elevated. So that's all the first aspect, the tachton, the lower aspect of doing the mitzvahs. Refinement of man and creation. Now we go to Elyon, the higher aspect, that mitzvahs were given to walk in God's ways. So we being godlike, connecting to God on a level above creation. His statutes and laws, this is talking about fulfilling these things. Hashem performs mitzvahs that commands them to the Jewish people. Mitzvahs exist even before they're relevant to perform in the physical world. So what's the idea about us walking God's ways is that God does the mitzvahs and then he tells us, okay, I want you to do these things. Say that we walk in God's ways, we don't just mean it in the sense of doing Torah mitzvahs. Okay, obviously we're talking about Torah mitzvahs, but we mean it in the sense that God does these mitzvahs. Shemot Rabbah, so this is the medrash on Shemos. Another matter, these are the ordinances. Be'elah HaMishpatim, it's the first parsha after the giving of the Torah. Elah Mishpatim, these are the laws. Mishpatim are the civil laws that we can understand to some level. That is what is written. He declares his words to Yaakov. So Magid Devar of Yaakov, this is from Tehillim. These are the commandments. Tehillim says he declares his words to Yaakov. These are the commandments. Devar, Dibros, we call it in Hebrew Aseres HaDibros, the 10 sayings. Say commandments are really 10 sayings. Magid Devar are his words. They're being a parallel between those two words because they have the same root. His statutes and ordinances to Israel, Chukah Mishpat of Israel, these are the ordinances, the Mishpatim. So Mishpat of Mishpatim, same words. So they're taking this verse in Tehillim and they're correlating to these things. Because the attributes of the Holy One Blessed be He are unlike the attributes of flesh and blood. The attribute of flesh and blood is that He instructs others to perform, but He does not perform anything. The Holy One Blessed be He is not so. When He performs, He says to Israel to perform and to observe. Do as I say, not as I do. Well, God does and says, do as I do. Do as I say and as I do. There was an incident involving Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva, who went to Rome and expounded. The ways of the Holy One Blessed be He are unlike flesh and blood, as they issue an edict and say to others to perform, but the Holy One Blessed be He is not so. So you see it's continuing from what we just saw. There's a particular heretic there. After the audience departed, he said to the rabbis, your words are nothing but falsehood. Did you not say that God says and performs? Why does He not observe Shabbat? As in, commentaries with a little asterisk, God brings rain, makes the wind blow, the heavenly bodies pass through the sky, and all these violate the prohibition of carrying from one domain to another, or within a public domain on Shabbat. That's Yosef, that's the commentary. So the heretic is like, God carries on Shabbos. What do you mean God does everything that He says? He's not keeping Shabbos because He's moving things from one place to another. So they said to him, wicked one of the world, is a person not permitted to carry within his own courtyard on Shabbat? He said to them, yes. They said to him, the upper and lower realms of the courtyard of the Holy One Blessed be He. As it is stated, the entire world is filled with His glory. And is it not so that even if a person is in a location where it is forbidden to carry, as in the public domain, he may carry a distance equivalent to his height? One may carry an object in the public domain a distance less than 4 cubits. He said to them, yes. They said to him, it is written, do I not fill the heavens and earth? So he's saying, God doesn't keep Shabbos, He carries. And like, the entire world is His. What are you talking about? Of course God does it. Well, I was thinking something about it earlier today. People thinking, oh, you could talk to God about anything. People are like, oh no, you're really, I could say anything to God, like talk about prayers and things like that. Why do you think He doesn't know what's going on with you? Instead of pretending, you may as well have a dialogue with Him about it. If someone's struggling with something, God forbid, whatever it is, so you can he'll have your struggle and think, oh, I'm not going to say it to God, but he knows anyway, so you may as well dialogue with him and see what comes of it. Often, good stuff could come with it. First of all, cast your burden on him. He can handle it. He can carry it. But not just that, he knows anyway, so at least have open dialogue with him. And then first of all, maybe it'll help with the dealing of the emotional aspect of things usually, because you feel like, okay, I just talk to God everywhere and anywhere I go. But it's also, again, he knows anyways, so you may as well converse with him. And ask for the blessings. Ask him to help you deal with it. He can help you. Go for it. That's the epiphany of the day. Here, this is from Talmud Yerushalmi, section Tractate Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Elazar said, for the king the law is unwritten. King can do whatever he wants, basically. Usually in the world, the king of flesh and blood decides the decision, right? Like all the elites who have to tell everybody else what to do with their life. It's like, why don't you go get your own house in order? What are you going to us for? If he desires it, he keeps it. If he desires it, others keep it. Okay, all you guys go do this thing. Well, what about you? No, it's not for me, it's for you. But the Holy One, praise to him, is not so. But if he decides the decision, he keeps it first. God decides we should do these things, God does them as well. What is the reason? They have to keep my watch. I'm the eternal, I'm he who keeps the commandments of the Torah first. Shemesh v'shmartai, ani Hashem, ani Havaya. Basically, more proof text about how God does as he commands us. These are the verses of Tehillim. We just saw this one. Magid Rav Yaakov Chokam Mishpat of Yisrael. He tells his words to Yaakov, his statute and judgment to Israel. Hosea, this is one of the prophets. Mi Chacham v'Yavin, Ela Navon, v'Yedaen ki Yisham Darche Havaya, v'Tadikim Yelchel Bam, Foshim Mekashel Bam. So you saw we underlined Darche Havaya, the way of God. Who is wise and will understand these, discerning and will know them, for the ways of Hashem are straight, and the righteous shall walk in them, and the rebellious shall stumble on them. Emphasizing that Torah mitzvahs are the ways of God. Literally the ways of God. God commands us to do as he does. There's more text about it, but we'll see that it's not just talking about a general idea of God doing the mitzvahs. It actually specifies certain attributes. God has these attributes, we should have them too, and the different mitzvahs. God has done these mitzvahs, so we should do them too. So all that kind of stuff.